Hello, and welcome to another edition of Sun Dragon Tips and Tricks. I'm Rebecca. I'm the owner of Sun Dragon Art and Fiber in downtown Brevard, North Carolina. And it's my weekend, my Monday, so I'm at my house. And I had a lot of thoughts about what to do a video on today. And I thought I'd try one on fixing a pulled stitch. This is something I've had to work on a lot with my lace weight ranunculus that I just finished. Because it is a thin yarn on big needles, it is getting snagged on everything as I was making it. I'm sure it's going to get snagged on more things as I wear it. Here is an example of a snagged stitch. And as long as the whole thing has been pulled, there are ways to fix this without crying and cutting it and weaving in ends. That may have to be a last resort if some of the methods I show you do not work, but I thought I would show you what I do. Like something like this, the fiber of it is strong enough, it doesn't break. What it does is it pulls all the stitches in to make room for that snag. It gives in a way, and you can reshape that. It may not look as perfect as it did before, but it is a way to salvage something you've spent a lot of time on. So let's get to it. Fixing a pulled stitch. A lot of this has to do with redistributing your excess yarn, what's been pulled really tight. You may even see what looks like a little scar on either side of the pull. This is where the stitches have been pulled so tight you may not even recognize them anymore. And usually this means to redistribute the yarn equally in both directions, to work out from where your hole is. Your gap has been created. And a lot of this has to do with being able to read your stitches. It really has to do with knowing where your stitches go, and we'll take a look at that as we can. So I start at the pulled stitch and working with a knitting needle or a tapestry needle that is equal to or smaller than, sometimes smaller than a finer point is more preferable. The needle used when you knit the piece, I would pull on each leg of the stitch, that big empty one, the one that's pulled. And again, we'll look at this in drawings and on a few knitted items. Distribute the snag equally on both sides. So you'll have two long loops instead of one. So pull so that there's equal amounts on either side of this big, huge thing that's been created. And then work away from the center on each side to ease your yarn back into the row track that it's supposed to be on. And I put here, try to be mindful of your tension, which is how big or small your stitches were originally. So you're not over pulling and you're just easing it back out. Now this may not work if only one ply of your yarn has been snagged. If it hasn't been the whole thing and only one piece of it, like my cat is apt to do with my stuff, it may be a little harder to make things look like it never happened. So let's take a look at one example when you're on the knit side, when most of your stitches are knit. Here I've drawn what is a really big snag, but I've also drawn both the row right in here. This is the row that the snag is part of, and I've drawn little hints or pieces of the row above and the row below. So the first thing is identifying the row the snag is on, and sometimes that can be achieved by pulling. If you tug on the fabric around this pull, you'll start to expose the row that this row has probably been pulled really tight. I drew it more normal looking so that we can talk about where does this yarn go. So if we think about a rainbow and the pull is like the beginning of the rainbow, This is our red. I've drawn some dotted lines in here to see about where this goes. The rest of this pull, if we want to think about it. So the loop is red. If we start going in the direction to the left, the loop might go behind a few strands above and come top to bottom for the left side of the same stitch. The right side got pulled out. Here's the left side. It goes down and then it goes behind a few strands. I've done dotted lines for what is not necessarily visible, but it's there. I don't have a yellow marker. It goes from bottom to top with my green. It goes behind 2 strands from above and comes down with my light blue and goes back behind and comes up with my darker blue and goes behind a couple strands from the row above. It comes around and down with my purple and goes behind and goes up with my more pinky mauve. So these colors aren't showing up as well. And goes around behind and comes down with my brighter pink. That's the direction the yarn is taking. If we follow it on the other side, the pull was the right side of this stitch, and then it goes under a couple strands from the row below and comes up. That's my orange as I move away, and then around behind and down, behind a couple strands and down, behind a couple more strands below and up, behind a couple of strands above and down. Now these are different sides of stitches, different legs is one way to think about them. Under a couple of strands below, and think about it as sides of stitches. It comes up on what is the left side of the stitch. It goes around the back under 2 strands from the row above and comes down on what is the right side of the stitch. Goes under a couple of strands below and comes up as the left side of the stitch and goes behind a couple of strands and comes down as the right side of the stitch. These are all, we want to do them in rainbow order to straighten these out. So what I was saying earlier is we want to redistribute that big pull. So now he looks like 2 equal sides. And there's different ways to do this. I've drawn it so that we have half of it as the right side of a stitch and half of it as the left side. Now, if we were going to redistribute these, moving away from the place where there's a pull, I might start with the left side. I'll change the color here so it matches the colors of above. If I redistribute that, so I've put half of it onto the orange that was the left side of the stitch up above. The legs I want to tug on, if I'm moving away, I want to do this one first, this leg right here. Got my cat. That I want to do the right leg and then the left leg of the stitch right next to it. And then the right leg. And then the left leg. The right leg. And then the left leg until I have distributed that so that this stitch here looks the same as all the others. Same thing on the other side. As I'm moving off to the right, I'm going to start with the left leg of the stitch next to it, and then the right leg, and then the left leg, the right leg, and then the left leg, and then the right leg until this side is distributed. Last thing I'll say with these drawings is for a purl stitch, look for the legs. They're buried in there. Like the purl bumps are what is much more noticeable. But if we were to say that, say this got pulled, if we look at the legs, here's one of the, you have to really pull in between, pull up and pull down to open up. Here's a leg that then travels under here. I would pull on these things in between the purl bumps. Here's a leg that then comes over the top. Here is a leg that then goes under the bottom. Here's a leg that goes over the top. Here is a leg that goes under the bottom. It's looking for these things so you can start to see them. Here's a leg that then goes over the top. And here's a leg that goes under the bottom. I would pull on these top and bottom bumps or pull on the legs. To redistribute your excess yarn. So here's my ranunculus with the lace weight yarn that I knit on a size 10 needle. And I made an extra pull. I fixed so many of these pulls. The thing I'd like to show you is you can feel, like when you get a snag like this, you can feel on either side how the stitches have tightened up. It almost feels like a scar. Like if I turn this over, we've definitely got all the yarn that created this has been pulled from the surrounding stitches. So it's not that this yarn has expanded and can never go back to what it was. 9 times out of 10, it's that it was pulled. It's not that this one stitch was stretched out. It's that it pulled from the stitches around it. So to figure out how to fix this, I'm going to tug to see where this yarn is going. I see one side, I see another. I'm going to try to pull over here until I get these about equal. If I need to, I'm using a long double point that's thinner than what I originally knit with. If I need to, I can even pull like this so that I know that they're about equal. And it will have the memory of how it was knit. So it's going to be all kinds of wibbly wobbly. I'm keeping one half of it out of the way with my thumb. I'm going to go left first. I happen to be left-handed, so I'm going to go left first. And I know if I pull on all the strands around here, that looks like it moved my big gaping hole yarn, but not really. If I pull on this one, nothing else moves. If I pull right here, aha. So I'm not going to pull this super tight, but I'm going to pull it up. I might have to pull it off to the side. And it's digging in here and trying to find which strand, if I pull it, moves that yarn away to the left. I'm going to try to keep this tension as I move further away from the original hole. I'm going to try to keep this tension. I don't want to over pull it. I want to try to keep it the same tension as the stitches around it. Again, I might have to move it out of the way. I might have to tug to open up and find the one that's going to move this. Now, if you pull on something else and that big yarn piece does not move, stop pulling, because you might pull something else out really big. But when I tug like this, I can see what's moving, and I can find the legs of the stitches to pull on. And I'm just going to slowly redistribute that yarn out as far as I can. And if I can't get far enough where that scar seems to start, I might find as I go back, I need to redistribute it a little bit more. I'm going to tug on these. That's okay. I'm going to go back and work to the right. Here's the part that's left. And I'm going to pull, try to find just the legs of that. I might have to pull top and bottom to open up what got pulled very, very tightly. And pulling up here might look like it's moving that piece, but it's not. It's pulling something else bigger. So it's really gently tugging on things to see if I can fix stuff. And honestly, if I look over here, I don't have any more of that scar. So this is pretty loose right now. It means I guessed 50-50 and I didn't quite work out right, because I still see a scar way over here and I've got loose stuff right here. So I'm going to start working back. I'm going to tug on the strand until things look evenly distributed. And then I'm going to find the strand to the left that will move this yarn back over. I might over tighten and then have to loosen up a little bit. I'm going to try to find where this goes. And I'm going to create other stuff. Honestly, the spot I fixed looks pretty good. I didn't move all the way over. I still have a tight spot right here. I'm going to figure out where that was. Sometimes fixing a stitch means playing around with the tension near it. And sometimes I'd rather have a tight spot than a big gaping open spot, so I might leave it. But that pull is looking pretty good for this super loose stuff. Let's take a look at one where I have a pull on the purl side. I have a couple of options. I've got this big loose piece and I have tight stuff around it. I could go to the knit side and try to fix it. Or I mentioned with the purl side, if we really dig under, what we want to do, if we pull, I can see where this right here, if I'm tugging on it, I can see a leg here and a leg over here. I could pull both sides to be equal. And let's see where this guy goes. If I tug, I have a strand here and I have a leg in here. I can redistribute. It's kind of tugging on things. If you're not used to reading your stitches, you can tug on different stuff until you see things move to let you know where that strand of yarn goes to redistribute it. And this one on this side, I need to take to the left. And I'm going to pull open. And see this, if I tug, it seems to move, but if I keep pulling, it's actually this leg in here that's moving. Some of this just comes with trial and error to figure out where, and see that, where the strand goes. That looks pretty good. And now if I turn it over, I may still see it's pretty loose. The tension is not quite the same as the stitches around it. So I can try pulling on legs near each other to redistribute the tension away from where it's loose to where it might be kind of tight. But as I move further away, I'm not going to pull as hard because that will just pull everything around it. Everything's connected here. And I'm just tugging on things to redistribute them. The further away I get from the big hole, the less I'm going to pull to try to redistribute it evenly. This is really a finesse that comes with time. The end step of fixing a pull, if it's something you haven't blocked yet, would be blocking it to help the stitches settle. And if it's already been blocked, just kind of tinker around with it to see if you can get it to not be as naggingly out of sync with the stitches around it. Yeah, I've got a stitch right in here that looks like it got pulled. And that could be figuring out where that large stitch went and redistributing some of the excess. And I'll keep tugging on it. I think it's right here until I can figure out where it's supposed to be to redistribute some of that looseness. There we go. That looks better. So I hope that started to elucidate what I do when there's a snag or a pull in my knitting. This guy, I still haven't blocked it yet, but this one is ready to go for blocking. I may have just snagged a little with my rings when I even put it on. The same thing for, the cat's finally coming to visit. The same thing for wearing something this delicate. It can get snagged. My cat pulls stuff all the time. I fix what I can. I hide the fuzzies if there's fuzzies. There goes my cat. So play around with it. Have the courage to tinker a bit with it and figure out the yarn that got pulled super loose. Figure out what track it goes in and which legs you can pull on to start to redistribute it. And if you have helpers, that's great too, like my cat. So if you haven't considered subscribing to this channel, please do so. If you have questions about this video, please let me know. If there's a follow-up I can do that will help things be a little bit clearer. I try to explain as I did it what I do when there is a pull. And as I always like to say, may your crafting be filled with joy and confidence. We'll see you later. Bye-bye. Were you trying to help? Yeah. Yeah. Mommy's little helper, huh?